CPR, where we breathe life back into your organization, projects, and processes, giving you insights to recovery and avoiding corporate mortality events. Today, we'll be talking about designing corporate benefits in the 21st century. And joining us to contribute to the conversation is Jennifer Burnham-Grubbs. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hello. Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so glad you're here. Can you share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so Quantum is a commissions-agnostic insurance consulting firm based out of Los Angeles. We founded in 2012, right around the time that healthcare reform was coming down the pipeline. And so we knew that it was a really important time to show up in the sector because there were so many people completely confused by this astoundingly dense document that was trying to transform benefits as they had existed for 20, 30 years heretofore. And we launched and won within the first couple of years of having our doors open a couple of awards, just because from the very foundation, Quantum's mission and purpose was to be commissions agnostic, meaning we're consultants, not salespeople. We want to solve for the very best value on the designs for insurance solutions for our clients every time. And it's not a cookie cutter kind of thing. Everybody's certain circumstances really come into the picture, especially in employee benefits on the healthcare side. Everybody has different health. So our roots were really in tailoring and customizing around specific needs, and then using our critical thinking and our experience in the industry to come up with those out-of-the-box solutions that help you get better coverage for a lower price tag, which is really what everybody wants at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So let's talk about a little bit about let's start with basic expectations of employees and what do they expect when getting a job, and then let's talk about what differentiates employers. So what's kind of the base thing that every employer needs to be thinking about when it comes to their benefits design?
Such a good question, because really that too, by the way, has changed and changed in real time. So what happens with a tighter job market when things are really challenging for employers? Employers are struggling to get people to show up for work. They're struggling to recruit. They're paying more than ever for jobs, even for subpar employees. It's this competitive job market. So there's that going on. And then we also have the fact that we just came out of a pandemic, and people learned more than ever before the importance of healthcare during that pandemic. So that's really been an interesting combination of factors. And so my answer today is that, people expect a lot on the benefits side, even more than before. So before, when benefits were getting more and more expensive, and they have been for 30 years, the trend on employee benefit premiums has just been going up steadily, even before healthcare reform, okay? And it was becoming so difficult for both employers and employees to manage these costs. So during that period, people understood that at a certain point, when things got so expensive, employers couldn't cover 100% of your benefits plan. They could cover maybe 70%, maybe 80%, right? Because everybody was struggling here. And so the expectations were managed a little bit as to how deluxe the plan you would have. People were starting to get used to plans with higher deductibles. I think we've all probably seen and experienced those trends as people are attempting to offset costs. Well, now come to 2022, and it's this tight job market, and everybody wants really good insurance because they all had to use their insurance over this pandemic. Now, what I would say is you really need to have a very, very good teledoc solution in place. There are standalone products you can add to your employee benefits package that I highly recommend, that are not expensive at all, but they're 24-hour, 7 days a week teledoc that include, back pair. They can call in prescriptions, dermatological, and even psychological care, which is also another thing that had a big uptick during the pandemic. So I really recommend for employers to include that. And if you're at the cutting edge, you may be doing this. Most people aren't doing that yet. A lot of the carriers have teledoc, but it's limited. It's with a copay. There's all these trends where they're not quite there yet, but I recommend having a really, really good teledoc solution. Reason being is if you do that, you can get in front of the utilization. Employees have at their fingertips all this excellent care. They don't have to leave work, stand in a waiting room for an hour to go see their psychologist, whatever, that convenience factor. And then also that's off the grid in terms of utilization. So once you have larger groups where the care and how often employees are getting care starts to impact your rates, you're moving all of that off the grid. So that's one really important thing just for employers and employees. And then the other thing is, people nowadays, if you're at a company where this is common, you'll have maybe 3 or 4 employees, a very small business, and you're not offering benefits,
Mm-hmm.
you're really vulnerable. Before it used to be, look, we're a really small company, like, get it on the exchange, get it yourself. But these days, it really makes you vulnerable. So even small companies are having to find a way to put in group insurance. The good news is you can do it with as little as 2 employees or
Mm-hmm.
2 owners, or 1 employee and 1 owner. And it doesn't have to be super expensive, but the just expectation as a whole is you better have some decent benefits for me. Which is hard for
It
employers.
is, it is. Well, and we've been on that journey when we started, it was like I'm sure when we first started, we didn't have any benefits probably that first year, and then the second year added health insurance and I think we probably had 3 people at the time, something like that. And so it's kind of hard to find it, the rates aren't great. And that was the thing I kept trying to tell my employees, and I was lucky that I had people who just liked the work we were doing and wanted to work with me, because I was like, hey, we're gonna add things in layers. First we're gonna do this, and then when we get this big we're gonna add this. And and like we've, like, for instance, added a 401k, but we don't do employer matching yet, but at least we have a place for people to contribute to their retirement. And and so we just make these milestones. But you're right, it's hard, because when you're attracting, we're now 10 in US and 10 in Australia. And on the US side, now we're starting to attract talent from big companies, like the big four, right? And those benefits are just like never ending. And so it is a very hard challenge for mid-market companies to it becomes such a huge cost. So how do you maximize the value that your employees are getting, but control the costs so that you can stay profitable and continue to offering those type of benefits.
Exactly. So just so you know, employee benefits are now and have been for a really long time the second biggest line item after payroll.
Mm.
I mean, that's even more than rent, especially now that many people are working remotely, so you don't have to invest as much in rent. So it's a real cost. And so the real key is in the efficiency of the design.
Mm.
Because when you have a really good expert who's sitting in there consultatively and designing around what you really need, you're not paying too much for things you're not going to use. So let's say you feel the competitive pressure to offer a gold plan, because that way your deductible will only be $500, and the people you're trying to recruit from these big corporations only had a $750 deductible, or whatever. So you're feeling like you have to offer a gold plan, and then it's costing that much more per person per month for that plan.
Mhm.
Well, there's other ways that you could do it. You can have a silver plan with a really robust teledoc, or you could add in an HSA, and then you can contribute to that HSA, and then you can add some little things here and there, maybe some group life, some group disability, all of which I talk at the brownie points. It's like they give you the appearance, and then in fact you actually are to having more fleshed out benefits,
Mm.
but at an overall lower price point than putting it all into the medical, where it's hard to compete when you're really small, because you're not getting those kind of huge swaths of risk that they allow to scale down, and the pricing can become a little bit better if you're a healthy group. So that's where the devil's in the details, and making sure you've got someone who's really hands-on helps. Another thing that a lot of startups, so it's good you kind of avoided this pitfall. You did it just right. You start little by little, and you say, look, as we reach milestones, we're going to add, and you do it sooner than you want, because you don't want the people to say, like, it's kind of like waiting to get that ring on the finger. Like if you take too long, you know what, this employer doesn't have it together.
Mm.
But some startups, we see this a lot in Silicon Valley and Silicon Beach, they'll go the PEO route,
Mm.
the right off the gate. So, in Insperity, ADP Total Source, uh, TriNet, all of
and
those, right?
and explain what that is, because while I guess I knew the concept, I did not know it by that term until recently. So share with the audience what that really means.
Sure. So PEO stands for Preferred Employment Organization, or Professional Employment Organization. Actually, it's been so long since I've actually looked it up. I should Google it, but it's an employment organization, which essentially is a consortium of groups that one giant entity like TriNet or ADP Total Source has decided to take under its risk, and they take on a portion of your employer risk also. One of the big caveats people should know is they give you in the sales pitch, they say, we're going to take on all your employer risk too. In actual fact, they don't. There's only really 20-30% of your employer risk is actually removed and taken up into the PEO. The rest is still, like on your plate. But what they do is they say, we'll act as your employer for you. We'll handle the payroll. We'll handle all of this. These employees are technically on the books with us instead. You pay us all these fees. You pay us for their payroll. You pay us their payroll fees. You pay us our admin portal. You pay for the insurance. You pay for the commercial risk, but it's all in one lump sum. And we'll just help you get off the ground and up and running. And because they're taking hundreds of thousands or even maybe millions of lives under their wing, they're able to go negotiate with the carriers sometimes to get what would be large group rates. So one of the differences in large group rates is doesn't matter what your age is, the rate is the rate is the rate. So whether you're 20 or you're 50, if you want that silver 1000 plan, it's let's say $532 a month. Doesn't matter what your age is.
Right.
Whereas if you're a company with only 10 employees, then you have age banded rates, which means if you're in your 20s, you're really cheap. But then if you're in your 50s, it's like $1,100 a month for this silver plan. What? And then that gets tricky because then there's this disincentive when you're trying to hire people with experience, but then they're also more expensive. It becomes this whole thing. So there are the advantages of getting access to the large group rates in a PEO. And sometimes that'll be very attractive. And sometimes it's attractive that you can just get everything off the ground. Because when you do have a small business, man, there's so many hats you have to wear. You've got to get payroll. You've got to get risk, employer risk covered. You've got to get all these details, HR. So it's overwhelming. But here's the thing. You pay so much to those PEOs and they bake the costs in, and it's very hard to tell exactly where you're paying. So the PEO fees get really, really extraordinary and tend to far outweigh the savings, if anything, on the medical. And so what happens is people will take that early on, but then they'll get trapped in, and then they don't even really realize where their spend is going because it's just one big muddle of costs.
Right.
And it so what we do, it's interesting. When we have clients that are interested in a PEO, we have to look at how many lives there are, how many lives we anticipate, what their growth rate, and then we do a pros and cons analysis. Because sometimes if it still is the right thing for them at that moment, we'll put them in a PEO. We can still be their consultants because we have PEOs that we can partner with. But often, if they have a good consultant like Quantum, they don't have to do a PEO to still get all those sort of parts of the equation covered, like the HR and the payroll, all that stuff. We know all the different vendors out there, and we can help them get up to speed without having to take that route, which means that in the future, they're not trapped in, because PEOs are very hard to get out of. They're very...
I was wondering about that when I heard about it, because you would definitely then have to go, I imagine, set up your insurance, go find a payroll processing tool, and I can't even imagine what else. Oh, so go set up your workman's comp again. I guess it'd be like doing your startup, but this time you've got, when you're making that change, maybe you have 100 employees at that time versus the 3 you started out with.
Yeah. So then what happens is, and then you'll often get rates with the PEO that are really good, but then in 5 years, the rates increase like 125%. And then you're kind of stuck in this PEO because you're baked into it. You don't really know how to get out of it. And then you just kind of roll over and take the whole increase. And so I see that all the time. And then I'll sometimes get calls from people saying, I just got this 125% rate increase from Oasis. This is terrible. But then also when you're trying to help as a consultant to piece it apart for them, then they get overwhelmed again by the fact that there's so much that they're going to have to rebuild. So, my advice is if you're going to consider it, talk to a really good consultative broker. There aren't that many, but if you find someone, or if you ever want to reach out to Quantum, we're always able to do that. And they'll help steer you, not just for now, but for where you're planning to grow, which is, I think, the name of the game. It's a constant process, though, like you've experienced. When you're 3 people versus when you're 10 people versus when you're 20 people, it's really different because the business of HR is inextricably linked with benefits, and that's...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
When you talk about benefits, like, I know you said there's things have been the focus and the value of where people are putting, or the focus of where they're finding value in their benefits has started to change, but it doesn't really feel like corporate benefits have changed much. Like, I feel like they push a lot of the, oh, wear a Fitbit and you can, give you points and, a little bit of maybe gamification of like trying to keep their people healthy. But it seems like it's always around health, and there's not like many other benefits. You got some version of health, you got your 401k, you got your time off. Are there other people out there doing cool things that employees are really valuing, or what do you see in the market?
Yeah, I do see a lot of those things. And I agree with you that the large corporations are not as pressured because there's this tendency with larger companies that you get what you get and you don't get upset. If you work at Wells Fargo and your deductible goes from 500 to 750, nobody's going to be there to care when you go to HR to talk about it. And they're going to be like, good luck, you can go work at B of A instead, like take it or leave it. There is this anonymity factor where smaller companies feel the most pressure. Secondly, their designs are only going to be as good as the broker who's at the cutting edge. So fun fact, my industry is extremely male dominated.
Mm,
And also there aren't that many brokers that are far from retirement age. Let's put it that way.
mm,
So there are a lot of brokers that have been doing it for 20, 30 years, since well before
mm,
healthcare reform. And they have some dialed in sort of habits and things like that. But the innovations in this industry that have happened over the last 15 years have been remarkable.
okay.
My first job, we didn't even use internet applications, not for years and years and years. And that was in 2008.
Mm,
So, so it all comes down to the advice you're getting and the advice that you're seeking. And then again, people start to go on the internet and then they'll talk to the PEOs, which can give you this kind of bundling effect, but it's harder to know, um, what you're missing. I will say one thing I think is pretty cool I'm seeing is pet insurance, group
mm,
pet insurance, because more
yeah,
and more people have pets and everybody got a pet over the pandemic. So,
that's a good
and it's not
idea.
too expensive. And if you're trying to get pet insurance on your own, it's really expensive. So
Mm,
it's really nice as an employer to have pet insurance because then your employees are like, wow, thanks to my job, my pet insurance is only 14 bucks a month, and that's pretty affordable to me. And you
mm,
don't even have to pay all of it. You're just subsidizing the fact that they have access to group rates, or maybe you're paying a small portion of it. That's pretty cool. I talked about the teledoc. I really believe that is critical in today's world because people do need mental health, and mental health takes a lot of time out of the office. But if you're able to get quality psychological and psychiatric care and even prescriptions and stuff rolled in within a 1 hour visit, it's much easier to do that self-care and still show up at work and do it on your lunch break and stay productive. Um, by the way, the reason all those big companies are all about the Fitbit and wellness is that they have those banded rates. So the healthier the group, the cheaper the rates. So
mm,
they're trying to get you out there to get your exercise. They're trying to get you to lose those 10 pounds
mm,
because the less diabetes, the less cancer, and the less ER and urgent care visits, the better the renewal rate. So they're doing it partly because they care and partly because they understand this is their way to try to make the insurance cheaper for them
right.
and also you. But what we do know is that unfortunately the Fitbits and stuff like that aren't so effective. Like they
Mm,
kind of work, but they don't as much. There's a lot of cool stuff out there though. There are apps where you can gamify and create teams within a company and have little competitions for goals that you're going to set. There have been trends like that. There are special consultants that will do like, yoga and mindfulness, which is also really cool.
I think I need a company that'll charge me $1,000 or something if I don't go exercise, like penalties, or show up to my house and drag me out of it and be like, we're going to work out, because I think short of that nothing works for me.
Right? I hear you. There was a really cool company called Heal that was office visits at your doorstep. That was pretty cool. I think it's still around. And that was really cool because if your kid was sick or whatever and you had to leave work and take them, that was awful. But then you can instead be like, hey, meet me at 6. I'll be home from work. My child has a fever. And that was a really cool thing. I'm just thinking if they had something like not Heal, but like fit at
Right.
home or whatever, it could be like they put the trainer to use when you meet them at home or something, or at the
Yeah,
lunch off.
it's the accountability, right? Like, because if you're like, oh, I realize you can turn a video on and the same thing, but if somebody's showing up at your door, you're like, oh no, I have to do this.
Yeah, I mean, that accountability thing, and like you're talking about the punitive model where they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, your rate's gonna be higher if you don't. I think a lot of people would sue if that ever happened, but I think a lot
Right.
of us would be more active because that carrot model is only partially effective. They have that too. Sometimes there'll be large group rates you can see where if you're doing this particular wellness program, your rate is X, but if you aren't, then your rate is Y. That's kind of a punitive model. So, that can be clever. It takes a lot to organize those, but when you can institute them, they're good.
I don't know if
Um,
I do that to anyone else. I just know that that's what I need. I was thinking there should be an app where like you put in
Mhm.
$1,000 or something, and if you stick to it, you get your $1,000 back. If you don't, then keep it. Like that might motivate me.
Yeah, no, I think all that's really cool. There are innovations happening, so I'll keep
Yeah.
my ear to the ground and see what they come up with. But the real lately has been focuses on mental health
Yeah.
is a big, and then pet insurance are the two that I think are probably the most attractive currently.
Yeah, no, the pet insurance, that's a really fun idea. And you're right. I would guess at least 50%, if not no, more of a company's employees would have pets of some form. Um, and so that would be
Yeah.
good. We, and I don't know how you scale this, but to me it's like really important to figure out what's important to the each person. We're talking to some of our team in Australia about what's important to them, and you know um and then trying to use that to incentivize people to come on, with us. um but then it makes it very customizable, and obviously that's very challenging to keep up with that, and you also have to make it equitable to everybody else. Like, you can't be like, oh, I'm going to give you $20,000 to IVF, but don't have something comparable to somebody else. So I realize there's a lot of challenges, but I think there's a lot of value to understanding what's important to the individual employee.
Oh, definitely. And I'm glad you brought up IVF. That is another one. There's a company called Carrot Fertility that they are working with larger companies. So again, unfortunately, when it's like 10 lives, I don't think they even handle groups of 10, but it's like at 50 or 100, maybe even is their minimum. But they're doing where you can customize fertility benefits because that is a very in-demand thing. And that helps retain and recruit women because what women are doing more and more is freezing their eggs so that they have choice over when they have their babies. So they can be in their career in their late 20s, in their 30s without taking their foot off the gas,
Mhm.
without feeling that they're giving up their baby making
Mm.
potential. And then
Mhm.
they're able to do it later, either via surrogacy, which is also on the rise. Even in cases where people are fertile, they're choosing surrogacy instead, even though that's very expensive, but high earners can do it. Or then using fertility with the eggs that were frozen and doing it at their choice, whether or not they have a partner at the time and things like that. That's a really attractive thing because women are excellent in the workforce. They're proven to be really good employees. So
Yeah,
there is a little bit of a trend, but that part is so expensive.
it is.
Fertility benefits really not cheap. Like again, you're talking $20,000 per person to allocate any kind of meaningful benefit, or 10,000 maybe at a minimum, and that 10,000 wouldn't even get very far. So
Right.
that becomes prohibitive for employers when they're also paying for benefits that are so pricey.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's really challenging, but it's like, if that's what it's, but that person might be willing to give up other benefits, being like, these other ones aren't so important to me. This is what's really important to me. And so being able to kind of person by person create a plan for them that, you know, is really what I'd like to figure out how you do.
Well, you can do it. It's also how lazy is your broker. So
Mhm.
sometimes there's the misconception that you have to offer only one carrier and maybe one plan or a couple plans, and certainly all within the same carrier. That's not actually true. It takes more work, especially on the broker's side. But there are, let's say here in California, there is Kaiser, and then there are the Blues, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Some
Mhm.
people love Kaiser and some people hate it. But
Mhm.
Kaiser is a very attractive, very efficient option.
Right.
So you can actually do a Blue Cross or a Blue Shield alongside of a Kaiser and have them both at once within one same thing. Or there's even carrier called CalChoice, which gives you even more choice. And I do say, especially with smaller groups, when they're really trying to keep everybody happy, um, having as much choice as possible without making yourself crazy is a really great way to keep things moving and lower the price point, because, when you're tailoring to what they really want and need, you're not just throwing money at it. You're spending the money in ways that you're getting that return.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned the PEO. Are there other things that you see companies, and not necessarily small companies, even larger companies, some of the mistakes they make when they're putting benefits together for their employees? Other things to look out for?
Yeah, mistakes. Oh, well, the interesting thing I'd say is, especially in California, and there are other states that are maybe similar. New York has a lot of rules too.
Hmm.
HR and employment law are inextricably linked to running any company in many of the states in the United States. And most small companies don't have an HR person. I always joke around that there's always a default HR. 80% of companies have a default HR person, and that default HR person is literally the person who gets and opens the bills. Literally, that makes you it. Like, it's like, and you end up dealing with the renewal, even though you're not even really HR, you're just it, right? And then you deal with questions that arise as they pertain to payroll and 401k and everything else. And that's actually pretty common. But what's risky about that is it's kind of a minefield to be an employer,
Mm.
especially in certain states. And so when things come up like you need to fire someone, you
Mm.
need to be careful how you fire someone, because if in their at-risk class or the circumstances were around an illness, and if it isn't done quite right because you just don't know, you're really opening yourself up sometimes. And so what I think one thing that's really smart, and we help people do this, is get HR consulting in the door really quickly. It doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to have an HR person, because God knows nobody wants to pay one more salary just to handle all that. But like Quantum, every client at Quantum automatically gets a platform we provide called Think HR. We pay for it. And it's this amazing, robust portal with all the things you need. So for companies with 5 or more employees, for example, you have to do sexual harassment training. And
Mm.
that provides videos so you can check that box, and otherwise you're at risk of major penalties. And then for templates and hiring and firing and all kinds of other questions, you've got this whole deck, at your disposal. And that's free. At least then to start thinking about these things. And then you can layer on HR consultants. And we have a lot of partners in the HR consulting space. So you can start to bring in help sometimes, maybe 4 hours a month, and then escalate as needed. And it keeps it really manageable until if and when, and maybe never, you need to have an actual full-time HR person. But I do think that's a really good thing to do, because what happens otherwise, it's really like herding cats. And you're really also at the mercy of how good your broker is, because your broker might just be handling everything digitally and literally just working in a vacuum of just the benefits themselves.
Mm.
And you're missing the opportunity that this is something super important to employees. This
Mhm.
is how you create your culture.
Right.
These are where you find out what they really want and need, and you stay your core culture and morale are kind of growing all around those points of benefits and payroll and HR. And it is well documented. Paylocity did a study that found out that the more people invest in their human capital, the better corporate performance as a whole. So there's a direct correlation, actually.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I mean, because it kind of goes back to, I know it's not specific to benefits, but a lot of the people that we're attracting from these big four consultancies are like, I just feel like a number. It goes back to what you were saying about being at Wells Fargo and not being able to complain that your premium went up. All of these people, they want to be heard and they want to feel like they're part of a team, and they want to have a voice, and while they may not be explicitly talking about benefits at that time, that would be one of the things. They want to know they're being invested in as a person, and they're valued, and that they're not just a number. And the benefits can play in that too.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you kind of brought that and illuminated it, because if you're competing against the big four or the big companies, it's like the David and Goliath thing. But
Mm.
you have to remember their strengths and their weaknesses. And so your strengths or your perceived weaknesses can also be your strengths. So the fact that you're able to accommodate more, the fact that you're able to create a customized and happy workspace, can be why they're ready to leave some giant place where they really were just going through motions and feeling like it was also meaningless, which is
Right.
great.
Yeah, it's great for us so far.
Yeah.
Getting some
And it's in
awesome
trend.
people. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very much
Oh
on
yeah.
trend. I mean, everyone over the pandemic had this like, what am I doing with my life?
Mm,
Sort of awakening to. So it's very much on trend that if you're a smaller company and you can provide a reasonably competitive benefits package and the other things are, reasonably competitive, and you add that piece that you're gonna have more work-life balance or more work-life satisfaction,
yeah.
a lot of people would say, yes, please, I'll do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, this has been a really fun conversation, Jennifer. I'd love you to leave the audience with kind of the three things you want to keep that you think they should keep top of mind.
Okay, well, I would say top of mind, really think carefully before you go down the PEO route.
Mm,
And make sure if you want guidance, you're working with a really hands-on service-oriented broker, because it is possible to achieve all kinds of things, but you really do need good advice. So don't be afraid to shop around, maybe ask, who's got their employee benefits really dialed in, and get advice and get referrals and recommendations. This is the second biggest line item after payroll, so it's worth taking a look at it. And it's a key component of your success as a company. So there's a tendency to shunt it over to the side and make it an afterthought. But what's cool is sometimes you can get an opinion that's going to uncover a way to free up liquid that you thought was forced into the direction of benefits, but just a smarter design is actually going to make more things possible. And then you're even going to have more liquid available for other goals. So, like, don't be afraid to look under the rug, I guess, of the benefits design and seek out opinions. That'd be one. Number two, I will reiterate, Teladoc. There's an amazing product called Healthiest You that it's like 17 bucks, 15, 16, 17 bucks a person per month. And it's zero copay 24/7. And it can be a game changer in terms of that work-life balance we were talking about. There is a big education component piece, though. You got to make sure not just that you're getting it, but that you teach your employees how good it really is and that they can start using it. And again, you want to make sure you have a good partner in that so that the employer isn't the one having to do that work, but hopefully your broker is the one who's doing that integration piece for you. And let's see, a third would be learn to know, love, and understand HSAs if you
mm,
haven't already. Health savings accounts for those that are very high earners or very healthy or very sick. Okay, not so much in the middle, but like those extremes can really benefit from HSAs, which are health savings accounts, and or people who go out of network a lot. Like if you're in a city and you want your doctor and that doctor just doesn't take insurance, HSAs can be a really great way because you get this offset tax deduction on the back end if you learn to use your HSA properly. And it's a significant, it's like an $8,000 potential tax deduction. And it sets you up in a retirement account that you'll be able to use even for non-medical when you turn 65. So those are my three little tips.
no, that's great. And how can people learn more about what you do or get in contact with you?
Oh, well, we're always happy to help anybody who needs some help. That's our thing. So you can come to Quantum Insurance Services, which is our website, www.quantuminsuranceservices.com. And you can always email info@teamqis there just to get in touch with us, whatever your need may be. Anybody's welcome always to email me too. If you're listening and you need help or you have a question, you can just find me at jennifer@teamqis.com. That's Jennifer with two N's. And our office line does actually work, believe it or not. Everything is virtual these days, but you can always call the office at 424-286-2481 and leave a message, and we'll be happy to get in touch with you there. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Jennifer Burnham-Grubbs, and you can learn a little bit about the little tutorials and tips and other things that we've been posting there too.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. And thanks for your time and joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. And such a delight just to help keep this mission forward. So thank you for having me and for all those great questions. They were really
Yeah, no worries. And to our audience, until next time, keep your organizations healthy.
Hey! So tomorrow